In the order, good morning. Today, Hey is Friday, Parshas Tazria Metzora. We will learn the Sicho, the explanation of the Lubavitch Rebbe in Likkutei Sichos, or Schneerson in Likkutei Sichos, volume 27, page 107. In the order how the Torah presents the laws of Lesions of Pigoyim, we find a most wondrous thing. In the beginning, in the Parsha of Tazria, it says the details of the laws of lesions of a person, and also of lesions of clothes. But only the laws which are connected with the lesions themselves, which are impure, and which make the man impure and which are pure, when and how it becomes the purity of the impurity of the lesions. Later on, in a separate parsha, the parsha of Metzora, the Torah returns to lesions of man and says, Toiras ha-Metzora b'yom tarosai, the Torah of the one who contacts leprosy in the day of his ritual purity, the laws and the order of a Metzora and the day of his purity, etc. He should take for the Kohen should take for the person who is becoming purified, the birds and all the other things, the bringing of the sacrifices, etc. And after the parsha of Toiras ha-Metzora b'yom tarosai, the laws of the one who suffers from leprosy during the day of his ritual purity, comes the parsha of nigei botim, lesions that attack a house. And this parsha includes also the laws of the lesions themselves, and also the order of purifying the house through birds, etc., similar to the order of a Metzora during the day of his purity. So the Rebbe says we need to understand, why does the Torah separate the laws of a Metzora in two separate sedras? About the Pigoyim, the lesions themselves in the parish of Tazria, and the order of the day of his purity, of ritual purity, in our parsha. How come the Torah doesn't say them in one continuation? Meaning, not to interrupt in between with the laws of the lesions that come on clothes, and B, to say the same, both of them in the same center. B, why does the parsha of lesions of the house say after detailing the laws of a Metzora during the day of his purity, and not beforehand in the end of Parshas Tazria, in continuation to the laws of the lesions that befall a man and clothes? The Rebbe points out in footnote 6 that although only concerning the lesions of a house does it say in our parsha, Ki savoyu el eretz Canaan goymer, that these laws apply only when you come to the land, to Eretz Yisrael, or the way the Orach Chaim says that in the desert there are no houses, that the Yidden didn't live in houses, they lived in tents. So it's not shaykh that it should apply the concept of lesions of the house. So the Torah could have written the portion of lesions of the house with the introduction, when you will come to the land of Canaan, beforehand in the end of Parshas Tazria. And the Rebbe comments also that according to the Ramban, also lesions of clothes only happen in the land of Eretz Yisrael, unlike tzaras of man, which can happen also in Chutz La'aretz. C, why are lesions of a house different from lesions of man? That by them the order of purity of the house with birds, etc., come immediately in continuation to the laws of purity and impurity of the Pigoyim themselves, not like the lesions of man, which the details of the laws of the day of their purity is separated, as mentioned above. The Rebbe says another special concept we find only by lesions of the house, that God notified beforehand that when you will come to the land of Canaan, etc., I will place a lesion of tzonas, of leprosy, in the house of the land of your inheritance. So in this there are two explanations, and they're opposite explanations. A, in Rashi on Chumash, on Torah, and likewise also in the Medrash Vayikra Rabbah, chapter 17, it says, Besura hilahem, it is good news for them that the lesions are coming on them, because the Eladim that happened to live in those houses prior to the Jews entering Eretz Yisrael would hide their gold in the walls of their houses. And through the fact that there's a lesion, so he has to break down the house, and he finds these hidden gold. In the Zohar, after bringing the above mentioned reason, to find the hidden treasures that they have hidden in their houses, he says that since the Canaanim were idol worshippers, so therefore there dwelled in their houses a spirit of impurity. And therefore, I will place a lesion of tzaras, of leprosy, in the house of the land of your inheritance, in order the Jews shall break down the houses, and through these remove this spirit of impurity. And the houses which the Yidden will afterwards build must be of other rocks and other sand, as the Torah says in our Parsha, chapter 14, verse 42. This way, Yidden will live with a holiness and in a holy dwelling. So it comes out that what God says that I will place a lesion of tzaras in the house, etc., was for two opposite reasons. A, because the increase of good that was hidden in the houses. B, because the lowliness, the spirit of impurity which was there, which demanded that the houses should be taken apart. Even more than this, it is understood that I will place a lesion of leprosy in the house of the land of your inheritance, doesn't mean that in all houses of the land of your inheritance God gave a negatzaras, a lesion of leprosy. Such a tremendous, extraordinary thing would have had to say somewhere. It is merely in a specific part, and it makes sense that a small part, a small portion, even though that majority or all of the Canaanim were idol worshippers, so in general their deeds is worse, more corrupt than all other nations. So in all their houses there should have dwelled a spirit of impurity. Why weren't there lesions in all houses? So the reason for this is understood in a literal sense. In the spirit of impurity itself, there are many levels. When the spirit of impurity is not so big, not so great, and it was removed from the house through the very entrance of the Jew and his holiness in this house, specifically since it becomes his property, his house. And as the Rebbe points out in footnote number 20, that like Chazal, or sages of blessed memory, tell us in Medrash Bereishis Rabbah, chapter 58, on the pasuk that when Avram acquired the field of Ephraim, and that it's for burial site for Sarah, so it says Vayakom stay Ephraim, that the field of Ephraim got up, and So the Medrash says, and Rashi quotes it on the pasuk, Tkuma Hoisaloi, all of a sudden became elevated. Now that it became transferred to the possession of a Yid, it became a holy place. Or at least, through this that he established a mezuzah in his house, etc. Only in the houses where it was a very low tumah, because the most corrupt conduct of the Knanim of this particular house, over there came lesions. In order to remove such a tumah, such a harsh tumah, they needed to take apart that house. And in this itself, there are many levels, whether it's enough to just change the house and other racks and other sand, or you also have to take apart the entire house. However, accordingly, it comes out that where were the hiddenness of gold hidden? Only in the houses in which there was a spirit of impurity in the most lowest level. The Rebbe continues that similar to these two extremes, by the lesions of houses, that dafka in the most lowest houses were hidden the treasures of gold, we find also the general concept of lesions. Tumah, the defiled impurity of lesions, it's the harshest impurity, as the law is that the Metzora, the one who has leprosy, is sent outside of the three camps of Eden. He has to be totally separated from other impure people, that other impure people should not sit together with him, because the lesion of tzaras, of leprosy, is the harshest impurity, as the language of Sefer Yetzirah, Ein bera lemata minega. There is no evil which is worse and lower than nega, than a lesion. On the other hand, the goal of the lesions is in order to accomplish an elevation in the man. As the Rambam brings rules in his halachic work, Mishnah Torah, that the lesions, they are not from the custom of the world. They are not a natural thing. They're a sign, and a most wondrous sign amongst Yidden, amongst Jewish people, in order to keep them away from Lashon Hara, from evil language. God makes this change of negoim, of lesions in the creation, in order to bring a Yid to do tshuva, to return and cease from the sin of talking bad about other people. Since Baal Tshuva is higher than tzaddik, than a righteous person who never did a sin, as our sages of blessed memory state, the place where people of tshuva stand, complete righteous people cannot stand. So it comes out that negoim, lesions, that on their own they are the harshest impurity, ein lemata minega, there's nothing lower than a lesion. It comes in order to elevate the man to the biggest elevation from a Baal Tshuva. And the Rebbe says that this is also denoted in the continuation in the language in Sefer Yetzirah over there. Ein b'toiva l'mayla ma'oinig. There's nothing good greater than pleasure, higher than pleasure. Vein b'ro l'mata minega. And in the evil, there's nothing lower than a nega, than a lesion. The Hebrew word for a lesion, nega, and the Hebrew word for pleasure, oinig, they have the exact same letters, and nun, a gimel, and a ayin. And this comes to hint, denote that through the purity of the Metzora, of the one who has leprosy, one transforms the nega, that there's nothing lower than that, that from this itself should become oinig, pleasure, that there's nothing higher than that. And this is also the explanation in the innermost aspect, that the hidden treasures of gold arrive to Eden through a concept of a lesion of tzaras, of leprosy, and only through the most lowest houses, as mentioned above. This is fitting with the general concept of negoim, of lesions, that only through the descent, the lesions, which is nothing lower than this, comes afterwards the elevation tshuva, which is nothing higher than that. And by lesions of houses, this was seen visibly. We saw how the intent of the lesions was for the elevation, till that it came from it a great thing, not only spiritually but also physically. Just in order to arrive to this good, this is through breaking the house, breaking this impurity, etc. And therefore, the verse is very precise. And I will place a lesion of tzaras in the house of the land of your inheritance. By the lesions of houses, it was seen visibly how these lesions come to begin with from above in Asati, because in them we saw clearly the intent of the lesions. However, it still remains not explained what is the specific concept of lesions of houses that only in them does this come in a revealed manner. All the lesions are, the purpose is to bring somebody to tshuva. Why only, what is the connection of lesions of houses that only in them does this become revealed? So the Rebbe says we can explain this by first introducing the explanation in the statement of Chazal that through tshuva me'ahava, when a person does tshuva out of love of God, and out of this love he returns to God, then the transgressions that he has committed knowingly become to him as if they were merits. From the Lashon language of our sages of blessed memory, they become to him like merits. Not that transgressions that he had committed willingly and knowingly become like merits. So at first glance we could have said that this is merely a concept by this particular person, since these transgressions that he did committed knowingly, they brought him to the elevation of tshuva, returning. So for him they are considered Sichos, merits. Because just like through merits a person becomes closer to God, likewise these knowingly committed transgressions also brought him to tshuva. However, the doinos themselves, the chefza, the physical matter of these avedas remains doinos, they remain a prohibited thing. However, the Alter Rebbe says in Tanya, chapter 7, in connection to prohibited things, that they remain prohibited forever until the day comes, and death will be swallowed up eternally. As it says in the verse in Zechariah, chapter 13, verse 2, the spirit of defilement I will remove from the land, or till a man does such a great level of return to God, that intentional transgressions become to him like merits. That from this comparison it is understood that that the transgressions committed willingly and knowingly become to him like merits mamish. It is in the same manner like in the time that the spirit of defilement I will remove from land. Just like then it becomes totally nullified, the entity of evil, and therefore, and automatically the very essential thing of the prohibited things becomes changed. The very chefza of these prohibited things becomes changed. It becomes nullified, their connection to evil. Likewise also, through tshuva out of love, the chefza, the thing of the transgressions that were committed knowingly, becomes transformed to merits. However, according to this, comes out a most not understood thing, that each deed of transgression has a definition similar to davar sheyesh lo matirim. We know that if there is something that's prohibited, but it's going to be permitted later on. For instance, chametz on Pesach. During Pesach, you're not allowed to eat chametz, you're not allowed to even have a no from it, derive any benefit from it. However, later on, after Pesach, it's okay to eat it and have benefit from it. If a person makes a promise, the law is that since there is a mitzvah, it's a commandment to try to revoke that promise and approach a wise guy, chacham, somebody who knows the Torah and is a God-fearing Jew, and approach him that he should say that you're allowed to do opposite of what you had promised. So even during the duration of its prohibition, it has a definition of davar sheyesh lo matirin, something that has, it's going to be allowed afterwards. This shows in a decrease and weakness the harshness of this prohibition. And similarly in our concept, although we're talking about a deed of a transgression, an aveda, however, since through tshuva, as mentioned above, the chefza, the thing of the object of those transgressions that were committed willingly becomes transforms to merits. In the tshuva is a mitzvah, it's a commandment. So it comes out that this deed of an aveda, transgression should be to begin with a definition of a davar sheyesh lo matirin, something that eventually will be permitted. So the Rebbe says really there's a huge difference between an aveda and a davar sheyesh lo matirin. What is the difference? This, that a dvar iser can be in a definition of davar sheyesh lo matirin, it is only when this prohibition is oimid laheter. Therefore we have a law, we know that davar sheyesh lo matirin, chametz b'Pesach, it is not batel b'shishim. Usually, a iser is batel if it's diluted, and there's 60 times the amount of heter, of permissive food against the prohibited food, so then it's batel b'shishim, and you can eat it even the way it is. However, chametz b'Pesach, since it's davar sheyesh lo matirin, it's not batel b'shishim. We say, however, if somebody has pots and pans that are prohibited because it was cooked in its food, so we don't consider it davar sheyesh lo matirin. Why? Because although technically, even if it's a kli cheres, if it's a many kalim, if it's made out of metal, you can put it in hot water, or you can blowtorch it, those that have to be blowtorched, and then it becomes kosher again. However, since it doesn't become automatically mutter, it doesn't become automatically permitted, it is only through a tircha you have to expend time and effort and maybe even money, then it's not considered davar sheyesh lo matirin. Not only by nedari, by promises, that the HaTorah, when the Chacham comes and he permits it, it's not shot that there was a promise. The promise applied for a certain amount of time, and now he's nullifying it from now onwards. But he's oiker haneder me'ikoroi. He removes the promise from the very root, that it's considered as if the guy never promised. Since it comes through charota of Pesach, I regret that a door opening where the person says that had he known certain things that he didn't know when at the moment that he made the promise, he would have never made such a promise. So it's as if a person made a promise by mistake. It never applied to begin with. Even by a matir, which helps only from now onwards, similar to hekdesh and ma'aser sheni, which are in a definition of it defined as a davar sheyesh lo matirin, because they can be redeemed. So when you redeem a hekdesh and you exchange the kedusha that was in this thing of hekdesh on the money, so it's not pshat that this hekdesh was never holy. This hekdesh and this ma'aser sheni was holy, but now you have exchanged this kedusha, that this kedusha should apply to the money, and now this thing is yotze l'chulin. However, the thing is oimed laheter, it's meant to be permitted even during the duration of the prohibition. Torah, to begin with, gave a place that this prohibition can afterwards be nullified. It is as if the Isser, this prohibition, was done on condition was that afterwards a person can make it permitted, and therefore it's called a davar sheyesh le'matirin even during the duration of its prohibition. However, concerning tshuva, we cannot say that tshuva helps, because when we did the aveda to begin with, was given the possibility of tshuva. Because the concept of an aveda is that a person does opposite of the will of God, and therefore automatically also it is the opposite of God's will that you should do tshuva. Even more than that, the Mishnah tells us that at the end of Yuma, which are the laws dealing with Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement, that if a man who says Echta va'ashuv, I will sin and I will then return, in maspikim b'yodoi lasis tshuva, we don't give him sufficient time to do tshuva. During the time of the sin, during the deed of the sin, so due to the will of Torah, there's no room for tshuva. And therefore, a deed of transgression is not in definition of davar sheyesh le'matirin, something that will ultimately be permitted, because during its prohibition there's no room on his permission. And this that tshuva accomplishes, it is totally in an exceptional manner. The later tshuva transforms the previous zdainis to zachyis, but during the time there was dainis. According to this, comes out that in this, the tshuva has the power to change the past, that the previous zdainis should become like zachyis. There is an exception there's a new concept over other concepts of Torah which also accomplish something that it should be transformed as if it never happened. By other inyanim concepts of Torah, they accomplish that to begin with it's as if it never happened. It is not really a concept of changing the past. Just since the thing was done to begin with, in a manner that gives a room on its nullification to begin with, as mentioned above. Just like when a person does something on a condition, and you explicitly say that it is the condition applies from now. In other words, that if the condition is fulfilled, then the deed applies from this very moment when you say it, not from when the condition is fulfilled. And when you fulfill this condition, this thing that you want to accomplish is accomplished from the past. For instance, if a person says to a woman, I am mekadosh you, I'm sanctifying you to me on this and that condition, and I'm saying that I want the kiddushin to apply not when the condition is fulfilled, but I want it to apply from now if the condition is fulfilled. So the reason why the condition can accomplish l'mafreya, because the thing to begin with was made on this condition. However, tshuva has to totally transform the past. Due to the past, it is something decisively prohibited, without any room for permissiveness. And now, through the tshuva, it is transformed for merits. And this is also the explanation why the concept of stonis nasalei kezachyis, that transgressions that were done knowingly become to him like merits. It is accomplished only through tshuva that comes out of love of God, not tshuva that comes out of awe of God and respect. As the Rebbe adds in Tanya, that this means in tshuva out of love itself, a tshuva out of love from the very depth of the heart, with a great love, etc. That with this, the Rebbe is referring to a tshuva of the shout of the heart, which touches the very essence of his soul, etc. Because how could a Yid change the past? This is because the very essence of the soul of a Yid, of a Jew, is connected with God, that by him past, present, and future as all one. And therefore, through tshuva of love from the very essence of the soul, a Yid stands higher from the limitations of time, and it can change even the past. According to all of mentioned above, we will understand also the order of the parsha of the Goyim, of lesions. Since lesions are a concept of ultimate evil, there's nothing in evil lower than a lesion. So, during the time of the impurity, there's no room for his purity. He's totally excluded from whatever connection with the place of the purity. And the purity of Metzora is as a new concept. It's a news that comes from the Kohen that accomplishes this purity. And this, the Torah denotes with this that it separates the laws of Nigei Adam, of lesions of man, and the Torah of the Metzora on the day of his ritual purity in two separate sedras, because the tomb of Metzora and his purity are two opposites which don't come together. This is but only the way it is due to man, but from due to the Eibishter. So the whole intent of lesions is to begin with for the purity and elevation that comes through this, as mentioned above. And this is the reason why only by the lesions of the houses it says, and I will place lesion, etc., and that only by them it was recognized in a revealed manner how they were to begin with, given for the good of the Yidden, because a house of a person which is not limited according to his height, etc., of the person who lives in it transcends a person, and things that transcend a person, there are two levels. Clothes, they transcend a person. They are not digested by a person. Yet, when a person goes to buy clothes, he tailors the clothes specifically according to the measurement of the person. But when a person comes to buy a house, he doesn't say, well, listen, I'm 6 feet, so therefore I need a house that's 8 feet. Or saying, well, I am only 2 feet or 3 feet tall, so therefore I can suffice, make do with a house that's 5 feet. It doesn't work that way. And this transcender, which is distant transcender, Makif HaRochik, is connected with the level of Yechida within the soul, which is the essence of the soul, the most hidden area in the soul. And our sages say that each man that doesn't have land to build on it is not a person. And this Yechida within the soul is totally higher from the limitations of the body. The levels of the neshama which shine within the person, or the level which is connected with the garments of a person, which is at least a transcender, which is a close transcender. So they are connected with the limitations and measurements of a body. However, a house, which is a distant transcender, so it is connected with the level of Yechida, which is above limitations and measurements of the body. And due to the Yechida within the soul, Yechida li'achedcha, so we hear how the concepts come from above, from God. And therefore, for this reason, by the lesions of the house, there is no blockage between the laws of the impurity of the lesions of the house and the order of purifying the house. B, the entire parsha of lesions of the house say they're located not in continuation to the laws of impurity of lesions of man and clothes in the end of Parshas Tazria, but in continuation to Torah Samatzora, Pigoyim the Torah of the one who has leprosy on the day of his ritual purity. Because by lesions of the house, it stands in a revealed manner how the entire concept of Pigoyim, of lesions, is only due to the elevation, for the elevation that comes through their purity. And just like it is concerning the lesions of the houses literally, likewise it is in the concept in spirituality, the exile and destruction of the Beis HaMikdash, etc., that the intent was to begin with, that it should become the purity and revelation of the hidden, treasures, the building of the third Beis HaMikdash, which Dafke God's hands will fashion, Mikdash Ad Mekoinenu Yadecho, which is above limitations of time, and therefore they will be speedily in our days mamish.